Taking a look at some fresh housing data and why it's suggesting that we're likely going up from here this year. Hi, my name's Ian Wheatley. Thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. I'm an upstate New York real estate agent. My area of practice is in central New York and the Finger Lakes, if you're familiar with those areas. But I want to cover something. First things first, housing prices have always recovered from their low following contractionary periods, including recessions. So it's important to not confuse market deceleration for full-blown depreciation. And following the housing frenzy post-lockdown, it is easy for less informed and experienced agents to do this, and even more so for the typical home buyer or seller. And if you are looking for strong agents, I'd be happy to connect you with any of my EXP partners. And if you are an agent that's striving for this information too, we ought to connect. Um, we're going to try to cover a couple different fundamentals, starting at the very basics. What determines price? So last I checked, we live in the United States and the state of New York, and that's my area of practice. We remain a free market economy. Not to be a smart aleck, but it's all about supply and demand. It's always about supply and demand. It will always be about supply and demand. Supply and demand, location, 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 supply and demand, supply and demand, supply and demand. Works same way. Everything else is secondary. Inflation is challenging, but it's secondary. Mortgage rates present new challenges, but that is secondary. The reality remains that there are more buyers in the market than there are houses for them to buy, which means higher demand, lower supply. So I've done a separate video. It's linked up in the comment section, particularly if you're watching this on YouTube and Facebook, that does discuss why interest rates are improving and why it is expected they will continue to improve for home buyers through the end of the year. And ultimately, that's just going to put increasing demand on the market. You may have heard in summer of 22 that there was a lot of noise about a looming recession or a housing market crash. Well, the idea behind that was there was going to be this glut of listings and houses for sale, and that was going to exceed buyer demand. And that was going to make the supposed housing bubble pop. But as we see in this graph, that really would have had to break a lot of, and really, quite frankly, very strong historical trends for that to occur. And what actually ended up happening was last year, in terms of new listings on the market, we underperformed, the last 5 or so years. And that's a big deal because that set up where we are today, where we have new listings lagging previous years. That means less supply. And when we have improving interest rates, which means improving demand with seller supply diminishing, simply put, housing prices can only rise. There's nothing else for them to really do. So often housing data is a few months behind. So the rest of the data that we have from like the best trackers about housing appreciation and depreciation is really from the last quarter of last year. And what that best data suggests at this point is that depreciation is already kind of hit the peak. And it's clear that housing prices, with an absolute certainty, they're not in some sort of free fall. And my advice on this market is if you can't afford it, it's actually an affordable market to buy in as you evaluate that we are at still some fairly historically normal or low interest rates. And, prognostications about timing the market, that rarely ever works. And the data does suggest that home sale prices have decelerated with demand. And it seems that as we enter the spring and summer buying seasons with less supply than recent years going into it, demand is just going to drive prices higher. So I do hope that helps you. If you have any questions, please feel free to connect with me. My name's Ian Wheatley. Thank you for watching.